In tonight's headlines, at least 24 people are dead and dozens injured after an 18-meter-long section of a major highway in Guangdong collapses. Hong Kong welcomes nearly 140,000 mainland visitors as crowds continue to pour in for the Golden Week holidays. And more than 100 arrested and dozens expelled as police break up pro-Palestinian protests at Columbia University in New York.
In a deadly incident in Guangdong, a section of a highway collapsed, trapping over 20 vehicles. At least 24 people were killed and injuring 30 others. Flames and smoke could be seen engulfing from the deep pit. Vehicles plunged below suffered significant damage. The incident occurred at around 2:10 a.m. in Dabu County of Guangdong's northern Meizhou city. A stretch of road about 18 meters caved in. The area in Guangdong province had been hit by persistent heavy rains. Authorities have sent around 500 personnel to the site to help with the rescue operation. The reason for the collapse has yet to be declared, and the matter is still under investigation.
As the 5-day Golden Week holiday kicked off on the mainland, more than 40,000 visitors crossed into Hong Kong this morning. Among the 43,000 visitors, roughly 14,000 came by flight, while the rest entered the city through various border checkpoints. While many of the inbound tourists arrived early, Director of Immigration Benson Kwok said journey time could have been delayed due to heavy rain. As the number of visitors started to swell, some revealed that it was their first time traveling to Hong Kong. This man said he will be spending his entire 5-day stay trekking on a Macau Host trail, while this woman will be taking her children to Disneyland. Many were taking a one-day trip to the city and were not planning to spend too much, but were excited to go sightseeing. This mainland tourist, who has already emigrated overseas, was still keen to check up on Hong Kong, as she hasn't been here for a long time. She said her main purpose on this trip was to learn more about the city's talent entry scheme, as her children, who are graduating soon, are interested in working in Hong Kong. As of 10 a.m., 67,000 people left the city, including 48,000 permanent residents. Janice Yu, Cable News. There were doubts whether the much-anticipated pyrotechnic show over Victoria Harbour tonight could be rescheduled due to unsettled weather. But the tourism board gave the green light for the event earlier in the day after assessing the situation based on the forecast provided by the observatory. Rocky Ip, Director of Operation of the harbour cruise, Bohemia, has earlier mentioned that customers who bought cruise tickets for tonight could opt for a refund or reschedule their plans if the fireworks were cancelled. Speaking on a radio show, Ip said unstable weather conditions had affected bookings. Despite the capacity for 350 to 400 passengers, the company received only 200 reservations for tonight, Ip said. Other than the Tsim Sha Tsui Promenade, the tourism board has also listed out other viewing areas, such as the Wan Chai Harbourfront, for a good glimpse of the 10-minute fireworks display, which will spell out the city's initials as smiley faces spread across the sky. Janice Yu, Cable News. Trying to get a first-hand review from Frontline Workers, Chief Executive John Lee, along with Labour and Welfare Secretary Chris Sun and Environmental Chief Jie Chun-wen, met with janitors at a housing estate in Taiwan, which is participating in a trial run for the soon-to-be-implemented municipal waste charging scheme. Some workers expressed their concern to the chief executive, saying that it takes double the amount of time to complete their tasks, as they now have to segregate the garbage into different categories before putting it into designated rubbish bags. Lee thanked the workers for their effort and their contribution towards the prosperity of Hong Kong, adding that their feedback was very important to make the scheme work more effectively once implemented. Promising to reflect on their opinions, Lee said the reviews from the workers would be helpful in streamlining the whole process, and improvements and adjustments can be made to make the job easy for everyone.
Labour Secretary Chris Sun spent Labour Day visiting workers in the city, dismissing concerns that the newly introduced formula to calculate minimum wage would undermine the competitiveness of Hong Kong and the business sector. He said that only 0.6%, or roughly 17,700 individuals of the entire working population, currently earn the minimum wage. He reassured that the change would safeguard the interests of grassroots workers during economic downturns while allowing them to benefit from times of prosperity. The Executive Council on Tuesday gave the green light to review the minimum wage annually instead of every 2 years. The decision aims to ensure that adjustments take into account the city's economic growth and inflation rates, and guarantees that there will be no reduction in workers' hourly pay. Concerned groups have urged the government to raise the minimum wage to $50 per hour, saying the new mechanism would hardly improve the livelihoods of low-income workers. Police platoons in riot gear entered the campus of Columbia University in New York, streaming in through the windows of Hamilton Hall, a building that pro-Palestinian protesters had barricaded themselves in. Demonstrators used furniture and metal barricades to block access to the academic building, which has a long-standing history of student takeovers. Over 100 protesters were arrested. Authorities said they cleared the scene within 2 hours, and all encampments were also removed from the grounds, stressing that no tear gas was deployed during the operation. Columbia University President Minouche Shafik had requested intervention from law enforcement after protesters ignored an earlier ultimatum to leave the encampments or face suspension. The police will remain on campus until at least May 17th to maintain order and ensure that new encampments are not erected. Earlier, New York Mayor Eric Adams pointed fingers at outside agitators with no affiliation to the university, condemning their takeovers of the protests.
We cannot and will not allow what should be a peaceful gathering to turn into a violent spectacle that serves no purpose. We cannot wait till this situation becomes even more serious. This must end now.
The protests across university campuses in the United States have prompted the U.S. Congress to take action, saying that if university officials don't act, then Congress will crack down on the troublemakers.
What are university officials waiting on? What do they need to see before they stand up to these terrorist sympathizers? And that is exactly what they are. They're proudly chanting things like death to America and profanity and hate-filled slogans, and this is utterly despicable, and it cannot be accepted in this country.
At the University of North Carolina, classes were canceled after about 30 students were detained by campus police. The action came after protesters refused to leave their encampments. The protesters were demanding divestment by their institutions from companies with ties to Israel. The White House denounced the non-peaceful efforts to protest, saying it was the wrong approach. Cheryl Yun, Cable News. In the midst of ongoing truce negotiations between Israel and Hamas, Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reaffirmed that Israel forces would enter Rafah, regardless of whether Hamas accepts the conditions for a sustained ceasefire for hostages deal. He made a statement during a meeting with families of hostages held captive by Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Israeli airstrikes in Gaza continued, hitting a residential house in the central city of Deir al-Balah, killing at least one person. The U.S. State Department expressed strong opposition to a potential Israeli invasion of Rafah, stressing that the southern Gaza city serves as a crucial conduit for humanitarian aid and a safe departure point for foreign nationals. Continuing his Middle East crisis tour to advance truce talks, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken once again reiterated Washington's opposition over an Israeli offensive in Rafah.
Our focus right now is on getting a ceasefire and hostages home. That is the most urgent thing. And it's also, I think, what is achievable because the Israelis have put a strong proposal on the table. They've demonstrated that they're willing to compromise. And now it's on Hamas.
United Nations Secretary General Guterres also warned against an Israeli military assault on Rafah.
I strongly encourage the government of Israel and the Hamas leadership to reach now an agreement. Without that, I fear the war, with all its consequences both in Gaza and across the region, will worsen exponentially.
Cheryl Yun, Cable News.